First of all, what we're going to do is just run you through the principles of our activity, what DairyCo are here to do in terms of our public-facing work, and how we go about that. One of the things we're really keen to do, as Gareth mentioned, is to allow enough time for questions at the end of the presentation, because this is all about audience participation, even though I'm not able to see you all. So, you know, really looking forward to getting your questions at the end of the evening. This is your time. So thanks very much for joining us. So just as a little bit of a check, I'm now going to just click down and make sure you can all see the first slide. Okay, great. Okay, so just really to talk a little bit about our strategy in DairyCo in terms of our public-facing work. That we've already got a really good public view of our dairy farming industry. We track that through our consumer research, so we don't just feel that, we actually know it. We undertake research once a quarter with a panel with YouGov, and so we do regularly track what the public see of us and the way we go about farming in this country. So, of course, the reason why we're saying then maintain and improve is that we're already starting from a really good base, but of course we're wanting to make sure that we stay right on top of that. Also really important for us as well is the consumers of the future. So we do have a specific focus on improving the level of knowledge amongst children. We do that through some work which we're going to talk to you about in a moment. Children of school age, about primary food production. I'm pleased to see some of the curriculum changes that we've had of late, which make that even more pertinent. In order to do this, just like everything else that we do in DairyCo, everything is evidence-based. So you wouldn't expect our marketing activity to be any different, and that's why it's really important that we undertake consumer research to gather views about our industry, to get insight into what the public are thinking, and that we gather as much insight as we can to make sure that we're doing that from a sound evidence base. One thing just to mention in terms of DairyCo's role, it's really important to recognise as well that clearly we're not the only people that are out there promoting the image of our industry. And there's just a few logos there in terms of industry activity. So clearly the farming unions have a very key role to play in making sure that our public image is promoted as well, with lots of campaigns that the farming unions have underway. The Dairy Council, as you know, they're also an evidence-based body. They're predominantly looking at human health and nutrition, and you might see the campaign logo down there, Milk It for All It's Worth. Dairy Makes a Difference is a Dairy UK initiative, which is very much around an influencer strategy. And of course, from DairyCo's point of view and the farming unions, we're all absolutely well behind the Red Tractor, and much of what you'll hear about tonight is about DairyCo's role in promoting your and our point of difference, which is the great standards that we have behind dairy farming in this country and our dairy products. The other thing that we will talk about a bit as we go through talking about media relations is quite clearly also we've got very different roles to play. So, membership and lobbying organisations have got a very different role clearly to what DairyCo and the Dairy Council have as evidence-based bodies. So it's important to remember each of our roles that really complement one another. And not only do they complement one another, but it's actually a decision and a conscious choice that we all make to make sure that we sit down together and that we do all work out between us, where our respective roles are, and how we can all join up with that activity. So DairyCo's role in all of this is very much around improving the consumer image of dairy farming. What do we mean by that in practice? Well, it's a combination of activity, what we would call in marketing terms as proactive PR, so proactive public relations. And what this is really all about is relationships, which a lot of what we all do is all about relationships. So this is about developing relationships with journalists, with publications, with people in a wide range of roles, but really all about placing positive stories to promote the image of dairy farming with consumers. Because that's a public relations activity, in other words, we rely on the relationships that we develop with the media and influencers, then essentially they are telling our story for us. So that's really great news because it's very cost-effective marketing activity. But we also need to remember that with PR you can't always control the message. Digital, as many of you know, and here we are just actually demonstrating and all taking advantage of this changing world of digital that we have, that actually it's a very cost-effective way, as I'm sure you'll all be aware, particularly with the huge strides that have been made forward with Twitter. And I also saw the other night as well that that dairy farmers in this country are actually some of the most active people on Twitter in terms of the farming community. So, this is all about increasing our engagement with, when we say DairyCo's online content that you're seeing there, that's our digital platforms, our websites, which we'll go on to describe in a moment. And really what we're looking to do there is to increase traffic, so increase the number of people that come to our website that better learn about the role that dairy farmers all play. It's also important as well, you see a comment there about search engine optimization. One of the things that we've seen when we go on to talk about issues management is that when there is a dairy farming issue or a farming issue that breaks into the media, then we do see an increase in traffic to our website. So one of the things that's really important for us is making sure that we have enough factual content on our website so that the public can find the answers to any questions or any areas of concern. And if you think back to before 2009, any dairy farming issues that were playing out in the media, there was no independent industry presence online to be able to to put the facts out there. So that's really important for us to have that presence. Leading on to issues management, this is really where, and people will remember that we've had numerous challenges in the media over the years in terms of whether that goes from cloning of cows through to issues of health and welfare, through to large-scale dairy farming at times. And again, prior to us embarking on this strategy, then we didn't so much have industry lines agreed on these key issues that we may get challenged on in the media. And particularly between ourselves and the farming unions and the Dairy Council and Dairy UK, we spent a lot of time a few years ago getting our ducks in a row and making sure that if we were challenged in the media, either from a human health and nutrition point of view, then the Dairy Council well set to respond to those, and from a dairy farming perspective, that ourselves in conjunction with the farming unions all knew where we stood on important issues. Media training, what's absolutely key to us is having farmers that we can reach out to, either to deal with reactive media relations, that's where people come to us for comment, or indeed to help us tell our dairy farming stories. And in order to do that, we want people to have the confidence. So we do undertake media training of some of our ambassadors and board and staff as well to help build confidence. And last but not least, we've got a platform of schools and education work, which is about the provision of free education resources. And a little bit like we do with the media to influence the public, we very much take the role of the teacher here as absolutely key in making sure that our resources are available to them in the right format and at a time of year when they're doing their planning, for example, and so we want to make sure that those resources are available. And then, of course, that's not just about educating schools in schools, that's also about providing farmers with the right tools and advice so that if they're able to open their farm gates either to their local school or to the public, that we've got enough tips and advice available to help with that. So we talk about promoting online, and what we just want to do here is give you a bit of a feel for what that looks like if you haven't yet had a chance to explore the world of digital online. Hopefully most of you on this webinar this evening are already familiar with this, but our website, this is dairyfarming.com, has really evolved over the last few years, and we've moved it from what was initially quite consciously an information-led site, now much more into a sort of fun, engaging campaign site. And hopefully you've got some time after tonight to explore that for yourselves, but you'll be able to see that we've got a nice mix and a nice balance of facts. We feature news stories, and we've got a host of videos, and we'll share some of the successes on those in a moment. And also, it's really important here, we think, that we promote a positive image of the industry through making sure that these are real-life farmers that we're featuring, not just a corporate body that is behind the scenes. Then we mentioned here about educating schools and teachers, and you'll see in the middle there, Food, a Fact of Life. So Food, a Fact of Life is your brand, that's our brand. We work in conjunction with the British Nutrition Foundation, so again, very much evidence-based, and there's also a whole raft of factual information as well on the Dairy Council's website, milk.co.uk. You'll see down the bottom end that not only does our digital presence extend to websites, we'll talk a little bit in a moment about how we're reaching out through Twitter, and our extensive videos that we've got, which really help tell the dairy farming story. And we've also got a public-facing newsletter called Mooseflash, aptly named Mooseflash, that you can see down in the bottom right-hand corner. When we started off this activity a few years ago, we didn't have any consumers, of course, that we could reach out to. So not only do we use our own newsletter, but we also do use other channels. For example, any contacts that farming unions have with the public, or that Red Tractor have through their links, or actually through Twitter, making use of other people's public-facing reach. Our website activity, when we sort of think, okay, well, what does this all really mean, and how many people are we getting to visit to our website? Unless you have a very, very high-profile campaign to promote our website to the public, then what we like to do is, what we like to try and rely on is obviously reaching out through social media to get people to come and learn more about us, but also then we have farm gate banners around the country that help drive traffic to the website. So in 2014, that's in the calendar year, you can see the figures there in terms of the numbers of people that are coming to the site, and in terms of just a year-on-year for the month comparison, then we are seeing that climb as time goes on. Quite often we get some quite helpful, actually, tweets from farmers showing us all sorts of videos that are being made around the world, featuring dairy farming, videos that we can actually put out to the public. And we're pleased to say that our videos, just in 2014 alone, had over 100,000 views. So these videos range from things that are quite a lot of fun, and really have some quite engaging content with kids and so on. And some of those were fronted by Adam Henson when we had Adam as our ambassador when we first launched the campaign. The view time of the videos is very good. So there really is, there's a raft of content on there. Our challenge collectively is, how do we get that content out there? We talked a bit about Twitter. If you look to the left-hand side of that graph, that's before we launched, and you'll see a sort of fairly steady-ish rate of increase in terms of our Twitter community growth. Now, one of the things that we're really conscious of in DairyCo is to keep an eye on our Twitter following on our @thisisdairy farming account, so that we can actually see, the proportion of those that we think, because there's no really massive scientific way of looking at who those followers are. So we keep an eye on them as they grow day on day to see how many of them we think are members of the public. Because social media is great, but obviously it all depends on who your followers are and whether or not you're actually all talking to each other within the industry, or whether you're actually reaching your target audience. So we keep a really close eye, and that level of following now for a relatively short space of time is growing very well. And the majority of that is organic growth, but we can talk to you as well about the benefits of promoted tweets during question time. One of the things we do want to highlight is the types of tweets and the types of digital content that get really good engagement. Probably won't surprise you to know that actually those are more often the fun or the cute ones, and particularly with a nation of animal lovers, then the tweets that get a lot of engagement and a lot of impact tend to be the ones around cows. All of this, for those of you that are familiar with digital, you'll know it doesn't just happen. It does need a core strategy, And as you'll see from Abby Reader there, one of our Discover Dairy ambassadors, it is absolutely reliant on farmers helping us with that. So for those of you that are on the call that help us with this activity, thank you. And for anybody that's interested in getting more involved, we'll talk about that later. We now as well, I'd say that over the last 3 to 4 months, maybe in a little bit longer than that, we see some great engagement. And what we mean by engagement is people favoriting our tweets, people coming back and talk to us about their experiences, about what they can remember about farming, and also just generally replying to us. So it's not just broadcast. We know these are members of the public that we're actually getting through to. Now we're just going to switch the emphasis a little bit. So that's talk to you a bit about our proactive activity, how we aim to place positive stories in the media through public relations, and how we use cost-effective channels such as Twitter and the website to directly reach our audience. Obviously, what we mustn't forget here is the really influential role of media. And we'll go on to talk to you in a moment about really just how busy the last 6 weeks have been with the media spotlight on the challenges currently facing dairy farmers and the dairy industry across the board, really. Now, it's really important for us, obviously, as an evidence-based body that we do inform that debate with stats, with balanced articles, and I can say that this has been absolutely key over the last 6 weeks to try and explain to the media what essentially amounts to some very complex set of market circumstances. So ourselves and indeed, of course, others like Farmers for Action, NFU, NFUS, we're all busy behind the scenes arranging industry spokespeople. And for anyone that's familiar with media relations, what does tend to happen is that we all get a phone call and we're all set off sort of chasing around by the journalists often to try and, I'm talking about mainstream media, by the way, here, not agricultural press. We're set off trying to look for industry spokespeople in the background. So what we do is we make sure that we're all talking to one another behind the scenes so that we don't all chase the same media inquiry. Not only that, but we also talk about who's best placed to deal with the inquiry that we get through. But really key here is the relationships that we build with the media. The reason I'm putting the next 2 slides up is one of the real challenges that we have is that when you're busy behind the scenes informing the media, whether it's about the current issues that we're facing in terms of market conditions, or whether it's about placing positive stories, it will be very rare for you to see DairyCo's name spattered all over these articles. When we're looking to place positive stories in the media, then we obviously aim to get the website address in there. This is dairyfarming.com, but the types of headlines that you're seeing on your screen there, other than the one where you can see the Yorkshire Post, hardly any of those feature DairyCo. And the reason for that is quite simple, really, that the journalist is writing their own piece. They're telling the story from their perspective, and so whilst they'll come to us for checks on stats, they'll often come to ourselves and the NFU to ask for us to put up farmers for contribution. And so we'll be doing a lot of work behind the scenes, but for you as levy payers that have joined tonight, you wouldn't know that this work is going on. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have the webinar tonight, is that every single piece of news coverage that you've seen over the last few weeks, be those balanced or otherwise, and be those things that you're shouting at the television or getting newspaper print on your fingers as you point at them, then behind the scenes, either the farming unions or FFA or ourselves or the Dairy Council or Dairy UK have all informed those pieces. So we wanted to really let you know that, because it's all very important work. However, what I can say is we can't always control the message. I say we can't always control the message, but the Yorkshire Post is a good case in point, really, in that this is one occasion when we have been able to control the message. This was an inquiry that we got. Literally just the Yorkshire Post came into our press office and asked the question, how many dairy farmers have gone out of business in the Yorkshire area in the last year? Now through then some fairly detailed discussions and talking to the Yorkshire Post, and the same could go for any regional media really, they're close enough to rural issues that they offered me a comment piece. And a comment piece, essentially then I write that, or whoever writes it that is invited to give a comment piece. And I'm really pleased to say that that did allow us to get our website address in and really get the messages across to the public that we needed to get across. And so those really important media relations that go on behind the scenes, the great thing is as well now those are shared online, and so we are able to sometimes spread the word to you, our levy payer audience, about where we have managed to influence a piece. Of course, as well, there's some news channels which you might not all subscribe to. So Duncan, that's joining us this evening, also did a piece for Sky News that happened here in the AHDB office in Stoneleigh. And again, many of you might not have had a chance to do that. Before I flick on to the next page, just to show some more media coverage, you probably all noticed that when the industry is in the spotlight, quite often some people take the opportunity to jump on the bandwagon and, for example, with the systems debate, and start talking about, is large the only way to go? Are we going to see mega farms? And we start then bringing out the whole mega dairy debate. Now, I am pleased to say that the article that you'd see there down in the Daily Mail on the bottom, on my right-hand side, the real price of your pint, that one there actually started off as a very likely huge, big mega dairy story, and through some some long discussions and briefing with Tom Ralston, the journalist, and a farm visit, an accompanied farm visit, we managed to make that into a much wider piece rather than just the issue of mega dairies, as they call it. During this this period of intense interest, if you like, then of course what's happened during that time is that we've had some real challenges for the industry. That in itself drives media interest, particularly on the business pages, and it's really important here that we all keep a very balanced approach to how we inform the media debate. But just to let you know there that as soon as something happens in terms of business pages or outward-facing press releases or farmer protests, you can almost be guaranteed that as soon as those happen, you're in for a busy day in the press office. And we're sharing this with you so that you do know some of what goes on behind the scenes. So now we're going to turn a little bit to how we all meet with the public face-to-face, because I don't know about those of you that are on the call here, but particularly farmers that have opened their farm gates before, and certainly for me, where I have been actively involved in things like Open Farm Sunday, there's nothing better than seeing people's eyes light up and really seeing just how much they enjoy getting out and about on farm. So some of those education organisations that you'll see there, and the initiatives such as Open Farm Sunday and Open Farm School Days, we make sure that we work with all of these organisations to make sure that we've got the right resources and that collectively we're able to support farmers who do open their farm gates either on the farm or actually attend themselves to agricultural events. So our role in that situation is very much to be there to support you with the right resources and of course to make sure that you're well armed with all of the knowledge that you need to do when you're opening your farm gate. The other really important thing is alignment of messages, because we get so limited opportunities, all of us, to really get in front of the public, that if we're all busy agreeing behind the scenes what the key messages are, such as the one that you'll see there with Trust the Tractor, then that means that we're able to amplify all of our messages to a greater degree. Talking of Red Tractor, one of the things for sure for DairyCo is that as an organisation, when we're looking at what is the message we can give to the public that actually helps them go away with a more informed view of dairy and dairy farming, that for us, of course, the point of difference as dairy farmers in particular are our assured food standards, our Red Tractor standards. And we do make a lot of promoting the welfare credentials, the quality credentials, and everything that goes behind the red tractor standards, because believe me, that really is a positive way in which we, as marketeers on your behalf, can get a message out to the public. And so, one thing just to reinforce the importance of that red tractor positioning. Just sharing with you there just a little taste of it. We could have sort of 40-45 minutes just on the red tractor marketing work that we've all collectively done, not only across AHDB with the farming unions and of course directly with Red Tractor ourselves, but this event here, which I was lucky enough to go along to, although it was the same day that the Daily Mail decided to have a bit of a pop at us as an industry, so it meant for a very busy day between myself and Rob Harrison and the Dairy Council on that day. But this was great, this was fantastic. It's just one example of an event where you can get in front of the public and they can really engage with what we as farmers and our wares and what we have to talk to them about. So this was across all sectors within AHDB and key involvement from industry partners. And it was really great to just see people come and engage with the stand that we had at the big festival. It was great. And for me, those are the times when you can really see how people are interested in where their food comes from and how it's produced. A little bit about Red Tractor Week. That's a week in September where, again, we all as an industry get behind a single message and all promote our wares. Some of these stats here may not mean very much to you in terms of, they're big numbers. The one that is probably just worth drawing your attention to is if we look at what we call the advertising cost equivalent. That is essentially the amount of space, if we'd had to pay for the space that all of the public relations generated, all of the news coverage generated, that's the equivalent cost that we would have had to pay if we'd actually funded that through advertising. So it gives you a bit of an idea here of just how you can have very effective public relations and not have to reach into your pocket for £3 million. So talk to you a little bit now about the calendar of events. This is on our website for you to get a bit of a feel what's coming up. There's a few things that aren't featured on here. This is just a bit of a snapshot. But you hopefully would have heard recently through our press release that we're delighted to be working with the Dairy Council with the milk race that's coming up. An absolutely fantastic opportunity to showcase not only the great role of milk in sport aligned with a sporting event, but also really then for us to take the advantage of what's called the Milk Race Village to be able to talk to farmers about, to talk to the public about where milk and dairy products come from and how they're produced. So you'll hear more about that over the coming months. There's plenty of open farm school days as well, as you can see there. We've got a whole raft of things really coming up through the summer months that we'll be behind, and we hope you will be too. And in a moment we'll just talk about a little bit of a boost that we're going to have to our public-facing work in terms of public relations. So really what we're saying here is that there's plenty for all of you to get involved with to help promote directly to the public. It goes without saying really that this is also reliant on continued partnership working, whether that's NFU Scotland, whether it's NFU Cymru. There'll obviously be plenty of logos there that aren't on that page, but that's just to highlight really the importance of coordinating our activity, because of course collectively we're not only talking to the public, but we're talking to you, our levy payers and industry stakeholders. And I would like to reassure you that we do get together, we do all agree messages, we do share our social media content. So for example, we make sure that we take advantage of one another's public following, and there's regular dialogue that goes on behind the scenes to make sure that we do our best not to overlap, and that we really take advantage of our respective roles in promoting the image of dairy and dairy farming to the public. As I mentioned earlier, we're currently in the process of planning some additional activity for late spring, early summer. And when we say additional activity, this essentially will be us working with some of the people you see on the slide there, particularly the farming unions, to carry our messages out to the public. I can't say much more than that other than the fact that we're in the process of planning some additional activity which will be very visible, and we will definitely be looking to get you involved with around the country. So talking of getting involved, no need to wait for those things to come up really. We've actually, as we said, got some of our dairy farmer ambassadors on the webinar this evening. You'll notice the flyer, and hopefully all of you have seen the flyer there, that this was a request from farmers, directly from farmers, asking whether we could produce a flyer that essentially they can hand out to the public, particularly to talk about the current challenges that farmers are facing. We've now just today updated that flyer. So on one hand, on one side we've got what we call the call to actions, which is look out for the red tractor logo, follow us on Twitter, come and find out more on our website. And then on the reverse, we've got an infographic that explains what's going on in the market at the moment, particularly because we get so many members of the public and media coming to us that we want an engaging way of being able to tell that story. So you'll also see a Farmgate banner that's freshly put up. I'm not sure if Martin's on the webinar this evening, but that's freshly put up over the last few days. So any opportunities that you get to put these legally somewhere along, if you've got roadsides, or I think you all know the scores with what you can and can't do on roadsides. But this is a great opportunity for us to get Farmgate banners out as well. Get involved by way of coming to information events on Open Farm Sunday. We'll be having some regional meetings around the country to talk to farmers, just as we are with you tonight, about how you can get involved. And as I've mentioned before, really important that we have more and more dairy farmers offering and agreeing with us to be ambassadors. That can be as little or as much as you want it to, really, right the way from providing us with Twitter content so that we can promote that through This is Dairy Farming, all the way through to helping host media visits with journalists on some of the perhaps more challenging and thorny issues. But it's really important that we know we've got access to farmers that can help us with that. So just talking about this a little bit, one of the things that we talked about when we were trying to decide how we talk to the public and what is our voice when we're essentially representing the best part of 11,000 dairy farmers. And this is a little bit of the sort of process that goes behind the scenes. But all that happens is that a dairy farmer will tweet us with some content on our corporate account. This is at AHDB_DairyCo, and then you'll see us push that back out through our public-facing Twitter account, and we attribute it to the farmer, and the farmer then has a profile on our website pages. You might say, well, why don't we just have farmers engaging directly with the public? Well, of course, that can happen, and that does happen, and we've got some great examples of where that is happening. But also, we want to be able to evaluate and to capture those people onto your levy-funded website. This is dairyfarming.com, and so by hosting this kind of activity through Twitter and on-site, then obviously we can properly evaluate that, and of course then people get to see the raft of content that is on that website. So I've talked a lot about our farmer ambassadors, and I know there are some on the call here this evening, and as I say, we can't do this without you guys, because it's really important that we make this real and we tell real stories. So the more content that we can have, we get some great vines coming through, for those of you that don't know, really sort of short video clips that can be shared, and we make sure then that some of the tweets link back to the website where we've got farmers featured telling their story. So essentially this is all about being able to tell the real story so that people get a real feel for what does go on, and the value and the passion behind dairy farming. There may be some of you tonight that didn't really know about what goes on behind the scenes, or indeed want to find out more. And we do our best to keep you updated with everything that's happening. So once a quarter, you'll have your edition of All Things Dairy landing on your doormats. I know myself that you do end up with a bit of a pile of magazines, all staying in their plastic wrappers, for quite some time, given how busy we are. But what I would urge you to do is, if there's one thing that you read, please do read your levy-funded newsletter, because that's our key way of keeping you involved. We have already made some decisions to cut down the number of paper copies that we send out each year, and we're sending some of those out electronically as well. And so if there's any of you that in the future would only like to receive those electronically, those are the sorts of things we can start to look at in the future. Red Tractor newsletter, again, so Red Tractor themselves will keep you updated on everything that's going on, and we'll make sure that we've got our content going into theirs. Articles and key titles, absolutely key to us is trying to keep you informed of what we're doing on the public-facing side, and the role of the farming press in this is really important for us. Farmers Guardian, Farmers Weekly, Dairy Farmer, British Dairying, Cow Management, you name it. We really, it's really important to us that we work with the agricultural press so that you get a bit of a feel for what we're up to. But of course, some of the things we talked about tonight aren't appropriate to share out, in the public domain in terms of media relations. For those of you that are on Twitter, hopefully you're already following us there and on our public-facing account at This Is Dairy. And you can keep in touch with all of our consumer-facing newsletter through Moves in the News. And not to forget, of course, your local extension officers and getting together with your local EOs, which doesn't just have to be about, sort of technical and business improvement meetings. Your local extension officers would be really pleased to meet up with you and talk to you about community relations and everything that we're doing on the public-facing side. Okay, so just one last thing that I wanted to talk about before we go on to question and answers, and I do very much want this to be your time, is that I talked a little about what goes on behind the scenes, and one of the challenges with talking to the media, and particularly with broadcast media, is that we all know you never know how it's going to come out. And for those of you that have been involved in filming or been involved in talking to mainstream media journalists, we're always a little hesitant because we never quite know how stories are going to come out. And so, for example, this coming Sunday, that your industry bodies and representatives have spent a lot of time talking to Countryfile, and I know many people sort of hark back to the days of the farming programme, and Countryfile is exactly that, it is Countryfile, but we do a lot of work behind the scenes to keep those relationships with BBC, and in particular BBC Countryfile, very live, and we're always going to them with stories that we'd like them to cover. This Sunday will feature dairy, it will feature dairy farming, and right across the board, NFU, FFA, individual farmers themselves and ourselves have done extensive briefings and filming and given up time with Countryfile. Of course, what I will say is we don't know how it's going to come out, guys, but just to let you know, there was some activity on Twitter a few weeks ago saying, when are they going to tell our story? Well, they will be telling a story on Sunday, and we wait with bated breath.